Good afternoon. I'm Rob McBurney from DDSN, and this is our second listening session for commissioners to hear from stakeholders in our system about what it is that we need to do with the additional FMAP funding that we have been that's been sent to us or going to be sent to us by the federal government. So we have Commissioner Ed Miller here from the 6th Congressional District, and he is here to hear from the stakeholders. We have Pat Maley here from DDSN as well, the CFO DDSN, and we have a number of folks that are online. If you have any comments or questions online, you can send them in online on the chat. That is how the folks online can participate. We will read them. We'll try to get to them as we can through the chat later on. But we're going to first start off by hearing from our folks who are in the room here with us in the Clarendon County Disabilities Board. And I would certainly want to thank Ryan Way for hosting us here. Above and beyond the call here, we gave him short notice, and he was able to accommodate us, and we thank him for that. So we're going to start off by hearing from Susan John from the Horry County Disabilities Board.
Thank you, Commissioner Miller, for giving us an opportunity to speak with you and to share some thoughts with you. I am Susan John with the Horry County Disabilities and Special Needs. I think one of the things that COVID has taught us a great deal about just the resiliency that of those people that we support, the families we support, the consumers, our staff, and our agency in general. As we've weathered the changes in services, we've had to adjust multiple times. There are things that we've encountered that we never dreamt that we'd have to encounter because of COVID. Things like illnesses to our consumers, loss of staff due to COVID, loss of family members to COVID, loss of participants' family members, layoffs in our day services, wearing of masks daily for the last at least 15 months, social distancing, and particularly isolation that COVID has brought to us. What we're seeing is that we're seeing it's created COVID fatigue, and not just for the folks that we support, but our staff as well. And I think it would be short-sighted to forget that our consumers are tired as well, and that the changes that we've had to change and the changes that we as staff have endured, they've had to endure as well. And I think that we're beginning to see some of that manifest itself in some of the services that we deliver. What this has created is changes in healthcare, health issues, changes in behavior issues that we're seeing, staffing pattern changes, changes in social opportunities for our folks to get out and be engaged, and changes in the ability to spend time with their loved ones. A lot of those folks been in isolation finally, for at least 12 months. They're finally getting back out. But I think we're seeing some of the COVID fatigue issues that are manifesting itself. What has remained the same are fixed costs of doing business, our facility costs, our utility costs, our telephone costs, our water bills. Those things didn't change the last 15 to 18 months. That didn't change through COVID, and it still remains constant. And then what we're seeing is somewhat of an increase at times. Also, there's a significant increase in gasoline costs. And as we move back to doing services as usual, we're seeing an increase in our operational costs as well. Granted, this varies from organization to organization because we're all very different. Even with the changes that we have made in our staffing ratios in our day programs due to COVID, what we're now seeing is that we have consumers who are displaying the fatigue, consumers who are stressed, consumers who require a little more supervision. They're requiring more social space. They've had their opportunity to be socially spaced out in their residences and in their homes. And now that we're getting back together, we're seeing some of those behaviors manifest themselves. Yet at the same time, we're operating with fewer staff. In Horry County, we laid off 8 staff just in our day program through COVID. One, to try to mitigate costs and bring our costs down. As we moved to a fee-for-service model, we had to figure out how to live within our budget or live as close to our budget as possible. And so we're dealing with some of these behaviors, even with, fewer staff engaged in that process. We're also seeing that fatigue, as I was talking about with our consumers, we're seeing it in our staff pattern. They've been working 24 hours, 7 days a week for the last 15 months and supporting people to the best of their ability, all the while not only worrying about the health and safety of the folks that we support, but the health and safety of themselves, putting themselves in situations, as well as then taking that chance that they could infect their family members at home. So that whole fatigue, it just perpetuates itself. And I just think it's really important that we recognize what our staff and what our consumers are going through. The other thing that I want to share with you is that we are working on our budget for this coming year. And this is the first time that we as an agency will budget a deficit in our day program. And as we've moved to fee for service, we're looking at right now about a $175,000 loss in day programs, even after cutting 8 positions. And the challenges that we're having is that and we're doing a really good job. I'm going to put this out there. We're doing a really good job of bringing people back. And we have been working really hard on that since June of last year. But when you cut positions, you're still bringing people back. You're seeing behaviors. We're just seeing that we need more staff to fewer consumer ratios because of behaviors. And we just don't have the luxury of that because of the rate and trying to live within budget. So I want to say, one, we're budgeting a loss this year. And I think too, in a fee for service world, I think it's really important as a commissioner to know that, at least in our situation, we can't afford to budget for a loss. Each program, as we move fee for service, has to sustain itself. And when I see that we're not going to be able to sustain ourselves, then we ask the questions of, do we provide the service at all? And we don't want to not provide that service to people in Horry County. So I don't know if other people are experiencing that, but we are. Having said that, and really my point is what I'm trying to make is that every organization that is providing services is very different, so their needs are going to be very different. Our priority in Horry County is to address our staffing issues and making sure that we have competitive wages. In our area, we're seeing people starting at $15, $16 an hour. When you're working with folks who have behavior challenges, physical needs, emotional needs, self-help skills, and they can go to Chick-fil-A and make $15 and not have to deal with the support needs that we're experiencing, we are struggling getting staff. And so one of our large issues is addressing the competitive wages. Because if we can't even address competitive wages, I don't know how we're going to continue to operate into the future and support people in, residentially and day services wise. So my suggestion, what I'm hoping that you as the commission will do and DDSN looks at, is that in order to, I think, benefit the consumers and benefit the service delivery system, is we've got to get adequate rates. We've got to get rates for case management. We've got to get rates for early intervention. We've got to make sure that the day service rates are right. We need to make sure that the job coach rates are right, as well as residential rates. And if we can make sure that our rate structures are adequate, I think we can address many of the issues that we are all seeing. But right now we're not seeing that. The other thing I want to say is I'm hoping too, with some of the inputs of this money, we can look at final rule issues. Final rule issues as it relates to, I'll give you an example, is case management. As we move to conflict-free and case management, as our agency, we have 7 full-time case managers, many of those who have been with us for 15 and 20 years. They're 15 to 20 years in the retirement system. They have state benefits. When we move to conflict-free case management, that means that there's probably likely about 175 cases I'm going to have to transfer to a provider who doesn't provide day and residential supports like we do. Well, there's 175 cases or more that's fewer cases in case management. That's a loss of a position or 2 positions or 3 positions. So in order to mitigate that, we're going to have to go to hopefully our neighboring county, Georgetown, and say, put us out there as a provider of choice. Dillon and Marion County as a provider of choice. We're willing to take some of your case management cases, but in doing so, that increases our costs because we have to travel that much farther. So that's just one example of how those rates have to be right. The other recommendation that I'm hoping that you all will maybe consider is that for many months, you guys have been talking about the legacy homes that DDSN's been operating. We've not had the luxury of having money to fix those legacy homes. And I'm really hoping that some of this money can address the legacy issues. The challenge with those particular homes, I realize it doesn't hit every provider, but I think as a health of an overall system, it might be something worth looking at. The challenges is the big ticket items are the things that need to be repaired. It's your kitchens and your bathrooms. Those are the really heavy load ticket items. Unfortunately, I think the other thing to keep in mind, though, is that if we fix those things, that means those people probably have to move out of that facility in order to repair those, to be relicensed in that. Again, those are costs that a provider, if we were one of those providers, we're not going to be able to afford to keep them, whether it's in a hotel or whether it's in, another facility. And then if we end up having to move those people to another county for the time period of that renovation, we're losing revenue in our day program because our folks aren't coming to day programs either. So every decision, unfortunately, it has that pairing decision that I just want you to be mindful that it's not always that one decision that's the right decision and affects everything. So anyway, I say that to you. I appreciate the opportunity to give you some thoughts on that. I do realize that this is temporary money and that it's a finite time period for this 10%, but I'm also hoping that it buys us enough time to weather some of the COVID issues that we're having, that it buys us the time to make sure in our state system we get our rates adequate for the long haul in that. So again, thank you for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you. Okay. Next, we will hear from Ryan White.
Ryan is the reason why I'm here.
I wouldn't say that.
He doesn't give up. A good man.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Pat, for coming today. I'm just going to, just a few minutes of time. For one, just want to piggyback and concur on everything that Susan has mentioned. Here in Clarendon, I think most of you all heard our story, either last meeting at the commission meeting, but I just wanted to share it again with maybe some of the ones online that maybe didn't hear that story. Here in Clarendon, we were one of the first out the gate to be able to be affected by COVID. We had one particular house, and then it spread to another house. During that time, unfortunately, we had a few deaths out of it to occur, as well as staffing. Our DSPs were scared to death, like all of us, during that time frame because of the information that we were given during that time. The only thing you heard was death. Death, death, death. That's all you could hear, and how contagious this thing was. Well, they were definitely right, how fast and furious this thing would spread. But during that time frame, we struggled immensely on getting people to work. Myself and two others had to step in, early on and help man a house until we got them truly over the hump. And so it really opened my eyes on what all needed to take place, during that time with the amount of training that we had to bring in on the short end of the stick to get it completed, to take care of our individuals. The other part I just wanted to reiterate at this point, one major issue that we're having, especially here in Clarendon, is employment right now. Finding DSPs to work and just wanting to hire individuals at this point in time. It's been a very challenge. I know it's, not here in Clarendon. I know it's a national, crisis at this point in time, but what can we do? For one, to keep the individuals that we have employed with us to stay with us, but then what else can we do to entice our staff to come to work? I've always prided ourselves here in Clarendon that our workforce is, we haven't had a lot of turnover, but unfortunately now we've got a lot of staff that are working but a lot of overtime, I should say, and it's wearing on them as well. And like Susan said, our individuals too. It's wearing on our individuals now. And again, like Susan mentioned a few minutes ago with reopening day programs, I will say that we've been very successful in reopening our day programs here in Clarendon. It was definitely a challenge, and it's definitely too getting our community folks back up and going, coming. And I still have some community folks that we still have not seen. We stay in weekly contact with those individuals to try, but it's still a challenge to get those individuals coming. But employment is a major thing here in Clarendon. I think across the state, as y'all are looking at this pot of money to help out in whichever way that y'all decide to take y'all's approach on, just remember, pretty much each county is unique in their own ways. They're going to all have different, nuances that, one particular thing can help this particular county, something else for another. So just be mindful of that, when thinking about that. And I just appreciate the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Next, we're going to hear from John Hitchman from Sumter.
I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I didn't have any prepared statements, but I have a couple thoughts that I'd like to share. I had a unique opportunity, Susan and I did, to work in a committee through the Human Service Provider Organization. And it was actually a committee that developed a letter that was sent to each of the commissioners last month and to DDSN. And it focused more on the 6.2% FMAP. But what we learned out of that is what I wanted to talk about a little bit today. Our provider network is very diverse. So we have from the county boards that provide all the services like Susan was talking about, to some providers that have just a single service focus. And what we realized when trying to develop a list of what the top 3 or the top 5 or even the top 10 things that people had need for is that it was impossible, because every provider had a different need, or every provider had their number one priority was different than the next provider. So what we decided to do is take a more of a approach to, let's, if we can energize the system as a whole, meaning each provider have a little leeway on how that money can be energized into their system and worked into their system, instead of it being so prescriptive in nature, because everybody's needs weren't the same. So I just wanted to share that with you, because that was an interesting point that we entered into that process thinking that we could come up with, I don't know, I think we're as naive to think that we could come up with 3 points. Yeah, we started with, and we quickly realized that wasn't going to work. And when we finished, though, we realized that there's just no way that you could satisfy that diverse of a group and confine it to 3 or 5 or 10 points even. So I don't know how prescriptive you have to be with the development of this plan. I just thought I would share that, though, if there's any way that the providers that do receive some of this funding can have some flexibility in how they decide to energize their particular organization or their stakeholders, that would be greatly appreciated. And the second thing is, I'm sure you're hearing this already, and you'll probably hear it a lot more as you go around the state, but the recruitment of staff, everybody that I talk to these days, that's the number one topic that we speak about. We had a provider meeting in the PD region yesterday, and we spent the majority of the time talking about the inability to not just direct support workers. Of course, that's the most important position right now to recruit for and to try to retain. But we're also having problems recruiting, middle management, nursing. Yeah, nursing is a huge shortage everywhere you turn. And there's just not a lot of people in the workforce right now that are looking to come into our field. I don't know the answers to why that is, but I don't know that if there's a possibility that we could use some of this money to continue to try to enhance and increase our efforts to bring people into our system as a whole, not just in Sumter County or Clarendon County, but I think this is a provider, a network-wide issue. I know the regional centers are struggling as well to recruit staff. To give you a quick example of this month for Sumter County, we had 6 people that made it to the point of getting background checks and starting the final process of getting into the new orientation class. And we've ended up with 1 person that made it all the way. So that's July's orientation class for Sumter County will be 1 new staff person. And we have upwards of 40 some vacancies right now. And that story, you can hear that story probably anywhere you go. Most of the providers that I've talked to had some version of that story right now. So just wanted to bring those couple points up.
You brought up an interesting point. I was sitting here thinking, and one word came to mind: interchangeable. In other words, throughout South Carolina, every agency is different. And what we have to be is broad-minded enough that when we write the master plan, we make sure that we tell the boys and girls, and I don't mean that negatively, that we want to make ours interchangeable, because you may not have an issue in Clarendon County today that he is having, but over time it could change. If we have it in the master plan that covers all of the agencies, all of the folks that are the entities that we serve, it'll put us in excellent shape. One thing that I've learned, I grew up in King Street, South Carolina. My dad used to say to me, "How much you know?" I said, "I can't answer that." He said, "That's a smart fella." He said, "Because the ones that know, they are out there in the field. They know how to harvest the crop. That's why we are here. I'm not on an island by myself. Our success on this side of the table, Pat, Lanning, Mickey, and the entire commission, you have a commission that is open-minded. Okay? I'm telling you, I'm there. I've been around people all my life. I wouldn't say it if it wasn't true. So what I'm asking each one of you to do is, you are the ones that have to give us the input, okay? In some situations, there's a lot of money out here. Grant writers, they come with a charge. Everybody agree with that? Yes or no? Okay. So if you don't have the money in your coffer and you know that you can write a successful grant, right? And the money is allocated, is sitting there, then we can utilize that money to go out and get that piece of money. Because if you don't have any money, you certainly can't get any. We have a Pat used the term once in a lifetime.
I hope it's more common, but it's a good start.
Yeah, opportunity to do something here for the constituencies that we serve.
It's a great start.
Okay, that's what it's about. It's not about me. My job is to make sure that that person who really needs it, we have to figure out collectively. That's why I said everybody's plan. When it gets up to Columbia, I said we throw nothing out. If it makes sense, you leave it in, because I tell you, you can argue it later on. Because I can easily come back to Horry County and says, hey, I need some more information. I need some feet on the ground now. Okay, I need some real references. You know, when we watch them folks in Washington, D.C., they'll talk a while and then all of a sudden they'll say, yeah, I got Miss Jane over there. Okay, and Miss Jane is proof that we need to look more carefully into that. Okay, I'm reachable. I am accessible. Ryan will tell you that. Okay, I'm not that guy that you can't find. You know, you may have the answer, and then you said, I can't find Miller. Where is he? Mr. Nannon says to me now, shut up, I'm in charge. So go ahead. So does it make sense? Okay. Go ahead.
We're just checking to see if we have some comments here.
Any
Comments on?
questions? Any questions? We have, because, you know, we are blessed to have the staff that we have in Columbia. I'm telling you, I'm not guessing. This man got more knowledge than you can shake a stick at. Okay, so I don't even try.
A small stick.
No, any kind. Listen, because knowledge, you go to knowledge. He is extremely well versed. I've listened to a lot of people in my life now. I know the ones that smoking that peace pipe. That don't make sense. Pat not smoking no peace pipe. So go ahead.
We're gonna check in that, we'll open up for comments on the, for the virtual folks. If there are any comments, please type them in, or questions, please type them in, and we will try to address them here. Are there anybody else want to?
I got a question for the group here. When it comes to staffing, if the financial resources go out to provider network, which I sense is a direction, will that make a difference, or is the candidate pool so small it's hard to crack it? I mean, is money? I mean, money certainly is part of the answer, but I'm trying to get a feel for like how tough it is to get people even to fill an application.
You know, we talked about that yesterday at the providers meeting. It's twofold. It's the salary, but it's also how you retain and keep the people that you have there, and that not every money's not the be all and end all for everybody. You know, what are you offering from a perspective of how to keep people, like they're at places for advancement and that kind of thing. And unfortunately, in our system, at least I'm speaking of Orange County, I don't know about everybody else. A direct support is a direct support is a direct support. If we had enough revenue and cash to do it, I think we could go with the tiers where people felt like there were some advancement opportunities as well, and we just don't have that at this point to be able to push that level up. And I don't, you know, again, part of our issue is competing with, I know it sounds terrible, but the Chick-fil-A's and the Walmarts and that, just their base starting salary.
I feel like DSN did an amazing job a few years ago advocating for the dollar over over 3 years,
Right.
got us to a really competitive place. But I felt like almost a lot of that's been negated now by private industry has kind of surpassed us again, and we're almost back to the point we were about 5 years ago.
And I've got a caution about this as well, because what we're seeing is there's this gap between our professional, I don't mean professional, that's a bad choice of word. Folks that are in case management and early intervention, and how much they're making, what their hourly wage equates to is so compressed now to that much like a DSP.
Right.
And if we elevate those DSPs to, let's say, $15 an hour, whatever, now you might have $1 difference between your case manager. And there's been no change where that's concerned either. And so what we're seeing is case managers are like, well, you're not valuing me, you know, and so I just caution that it has ripple effects in the entire system. Yes.
And then the other part we talked about yesterday too, is just, with the unemployment, the benefit, will that help in any way as it's ending the end of this month? We don't know.
Okay.
So,
Sounds like we can't do nothing because there's not enough people. We're at such a low, and I
Right
speak to the
now,
regional
I
centers,
think-
we're at such a low
Yeah.
tank and like low gas in the tank that we're gonna do everything we can because people are gonna leave because they can't get a day off.
I do think though that we have to position ourselves to know that tank level is going to go up, and that the pool, hopefully, when this federal unemployment runs out and there's different expectations on what you have to do for unemployment, that there is more people out there looking, but we need to be prepared for that position as well.
Okay.
we were just like Sumter, where they had potentially 6 applicants and came out with 1. We actually, this is the first time, our July training, we had to cancel because of that issue.
Wow.
And that, it happens all the time.
One thing that's discouraging is I think this is I can't speak for what y'all are thinking, but I've imagined with new money coming into the system that this is the time to develop some services for people that are in need or waiting, but how can anybody develop right now because we can't bring in the new workforce to support anything?
I agree. I
It
agree.
does worry me. I think addressing the waiting list is really important. But it perpetuates, it's a perpetual problem that these things snowball and get worse. And bringing people into the system is, do we even have the support we need in order to provide support to the people we got, let alone new people, coming into the system, whether it's off the waiting list or whatever it is.
So basically, see, COVID has changed things. So what used to be inside the box no longer exists. So what we have to do now is be creative. That's why we are here, for you guys to tell us your recommendations and your thoughts as to how we should move and where. And then we go back and we hash it out. We ask the proper authorities, can we do this? And if they said no, the next question is why not? Because inside the structure of the why not, we come back and say, these are the reasons they say that we can't do it. Tell us out of these why nots, how we can make it work. Because you got to be creative now. We have to think outside the box. Inside the box, you will certainly not remain, but outside the box, because everybody else now, go to buy gas now. You pull up to the tank, and if you're on empty, and they cancel your card, and you don't have nothing else to buy gas with, you're in trouble. And I would say to those listening, wherever you are, now is the time to put forth your question. Because, sometimes people, they look at us on this side of the table and they say, oh, they have all the answers. No, we don't. The answer is out there. You feed us, we come back to you, and it's like combing your hair. We'll process this, and then Pat will look at you, and we'll say, are we ready to submit now? That this is the direction we're going in, and we need your stamp of approval. So that you don't come back later on and say, well, I didn't say that. Oh, yes, you did. Talk is cheap. That's
I do hope that we can develop some type of service model for day support. It's one of the things we learned through COVID, a way to provide services not inside the walls of the day program, and we're doing some of that, but that requires smaller groups of people and staff. So that is a model that I hope we can go to, but it's going to because if we want people outside the building, that's transportation cost, that's staff cost. One staff to 6 or 7 people. I think we can do those things. It's just we need the right model and the right structure and the right payment rate in order to
I think it would be helpful for the commissioner to hear, only because I'm going to hit on what Susan said was long-term sustainable rates versus short-term triages. And if you could just take a moment for the commissioner here, is before COVID hit, on February 28th, when you were doing your business and you were talking about revenue, expenses, rates, it's almost like we're forgetting about those times because that was a real challenge for us. I mean, if you could, because I think I don't want to forget that while we're worried about the crisis. And I think all three of you sense the need for the rate increase, but COVID is clouding that, I think. So if any of you could comment on pre-COVID rate, how that was affecting you, that might be helpful, so that we don't forget that. I put you on the spot. Didn't prepare for that one. All right.
I'll just say going back pre-COVID, talking about rates.
Yeah.
prime example, you look at this year's budget, you know, it's one of those ones that pre-COVID, that was the budget then, that what we were trying to strive for. And we're just getting to it now, you know, this year. But it's one of those things that, you know, after the Mercer came out, got that report out there, you know, looking at the residential rate, it's, that we were way below the end of that point in time. And now it was, if I'm thinking correctly, you know, it was going to be around a 3 or 4 year time frame to try to get the rate to where it was then, you know, whenever Mercer came out with their report. And so we're only pulling behind now when it comes to but you know, with those particular rates, again, day rate as well as our residential rate. And I still even believe our case management rate. I know it's a bigger market value rate, but even the case management rate, you know, is one of those ones that it has hindered us and we still to this day. Again, that's even pre-COVID with our rate approach. And you know, it's taking some things where we could have done some things differently.
Speak up.
Oh,
Speak up.
we'll pick up. Okay. But we could have done differently, and you know, we're only hoping that we can continue. And I hope that this year's budget, the way it looks both in the House and the Senate, that they're on the same page. But this is just year one of many to come to try to get the race. Again, that was what, 2 years ago at that point in time, or 3 years ago now, when Mercer did their report. So we're even both behind now.
I think the hard part about answering that question has to do with the fact that we had band rates. A year ago, we were still in a banded system for day services. And so we knew what our budget was. It was easier to plan, and we could zig and zag in some places. And January, you know, we're true fee for service, and so I don't know exactly how to really answer that question because we're talking about apples and oranges.
Okay.
One question, I think this is what you were headed for. And I talk about this a lot, is are we going to return any of those pre-COVID rates? Meaning, like what we pay for a nurse right now is ridiculous. So what we paid.
Your costs are up.
Right.
Yes.
Is that going to readjust back in a year from now, or is this the new standard? Same thing with supplies and things like that. We're paying excess amounts right now for gloves and things that used to pay half we're paying for. But I doubt that's going to be sustainable long term. But when, I guess, does it return back to pre-COVID levels or some version of that? So that's some of what it's hard to plan for right now.
Question.
And I think too, you know, talking about, you know, I'll use nursing as an example. In Horry County, the average nursing per hour for an LPN is like $19, $20. And we're at, I think, 17. I went back and looked yesterday. And we recognize we have to change that in order to be even competitive, to even get a nurse to come in, you know, to our door. And that is all built into, you know, whether it's we pull it from day services or whether we pull it from our residential band rates at this point. And I think the other thing we're really seeing, and we've been talking about this for years, are people are getting older and their healthcare needs are significant. We have so many more diabetics in our system than we've ever had in the history of the 28 years that I've been working with the board. And I just think that we need to have that in our forefront. The medical needs are significantly changing in our population. And the expectations that we have of our direct support staff to have that knowledge base, the expectations of our nurses to have that knowledge base, we've got to make sure we're adequately compensating them for that knowledge base.
We have one comment, Ralph Courtney, and we'll see if y'all have the same issue about how long it takes for DSS to do background checks for employees. He's suggesting that DSN pay for somebody to go over there and do the background check. I don't know how DSS will feel about that, but but are y'all seeing that as an issue as far as getting?
And see, our
Yeah.
fingerprint, we have a pretty good relationship with our DSS, and we get those back relatively quickly. It's the fingerprinting that is required, and the whole process that we have to go through for that fingerprinting, and because I sent you.
Yep, I never seen it.
Okay, so that was a comment from the chat. But you have anything else?
No, I was,
Okay.
there's so much wisdom out there. We're trying to get you from it.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
You had mentioned, talk a little bit about intervention. Anyone of intervention you
You're
mentioned?
talking about early intervention?
Yes.
That program is designed for our
can,
very
if,
small
if you're
children.
we're gonna need you to come
I'll
up.
set- I'll move it.
You can speak, but
That program is designed for the smallest, our youngest children, birth to 6. And that is a very intensive on-hands type of service delivery, where our early interventionists start in their homes and need to be in their homes once a week at least in order to help the family learn ways to work with their child, address medical issues, collaboration with OT, PT, speech, and all of that. And so, again, that rate, of all the programs, I'd say that rate is a little bit more sustainable. But again, there's still costs within that structure. The cost of gasoline, getting to those houses and knowing you have to be in those houses once a week. Gas has gone up at least $1 a gallon over the last 3 or 4 months, I don't know. And just making sure that we're looking at the rates and we're looking at the sustainability of rates across the system.
How would you grow it from where it's at now in your agency? What would you need in order to grow it to where you would like to see it?
It's a unique program because referrals for that particular service system comes directly from BabyNet. And so it's not like we can go out and say, we can market ourselves, not a problem to market who we are, but those referrals come directly from another through Health and Human Services through BabyNet. We have continuously monitored that. We continue to assure that the caseloads for that remain anywhere from, in our agency, we've got about 18 to 20 cases per EI. And when we get beyond that, we have to look at, okay, do we add a part-time person starting out to grow that, and then hopefully it grows into a full-time position? It's a constant, what you use the term a lot on the right, I don't know what you say, how you say it, but there's a right middle point, and it's a fine balance.
A tipping point. You guys are running a
Right.
business. It's
Right.
challenging.
And so trying to find that tipping point of, do I add or do I take away, or do we just remain the same? It has been a challenge. It's really been a challenge, and particularly in the day services this last year. We did transfer a lot of our staff to go work in the residential homes, but you couldn't transfer everybody. And then we looked for things for them to be able to do for multiple months before we decided that it was time we have to cut that. And then what we're seeing is we also had to reduce some of our administrative support. We're reducing, not that we're getting rid of quality assurance, but we're looking at positions that can somebody else assume those duties so that it's one less staffing position, less overhead, less benefits, less all the things that are part of that. And I imagine that we're all doing the same thing. But again, and I don't want to keep harping on rates, but if the rates aren't right, to know that I'm going into a budget year that I know I'm going to lose money in my day program.
In your mind,
That's tough.
in your mind, what makes the rate right? Anybody can answer the question. Just tell us what makes the rates right, Mr. Hickman.
I don't know, I've been thinking a lot about when we flip residential. I think that's going to be a really unique challenge because we've been in the band system a long time, but most of my career has been in some sort of band system. So there's some unique challenges coming ahead of that is, how are we going to sustain right now? that van covers, vacancies and vacant days, and when they go home to spend time with mom and dad or go on a trip. And we don't have that funding and that support in place for those things to cover that, or I'm assuming we won't, that rate will have to be right so that we can still sustain, because we're still gonna need to buy the same amount of groceries, pay the same amount of people, buy the same amount of gas, all that stuff. We're just got one less funding stream coming in during that temporary period, hopefully. So I think the answer is somewhere in there, in that gray area where it's gotta be enough where we can sustain, but not, not swimming in money either, so obviously.
Yeah.
I also think, I think it's really important to understand as a business model, you also have to factor in, you've got to put money away. Right now, the rates aren't sufficient for us to even have, do a healthy reserve. So if I'm already going into a budget year knowing I'm in a deficit in one particular program, what we're trying to budget going forward is at least a 5 or 10% reserve every year to put away for a new building, for new roofs, HVAC units, all those kinds of things that you've got to have money, because it's no longer going to be in the band rate. It's no longer going to be the ability to go to DDS and say, I really need a special grant, or whatever the case might be. We've got to be able to make sure that we have that cushion as well. So I don't know how to answer your question exactly. What makes it the right rate? Well, I think part of it is that one is you're providing those units of service. One of the things we've learned in day program is they need to come to 2 units a day. I don't mean that negatively, but I can't afford to have somebody just come 1 unit a day. I know that's terrible, not with the rate.
What would hinder that?
What's that?
What would hinder?
What hinders them coming? Well, maybe their health issues. Maybe they just can't. They can't come for a 5-hour, 6-hour period of time. Maybe behaviorally, they can do 2 or 3 hours, but then it's overload, and then they don't want to come. There's a variety of different reasons for that.
So if you had to recreate that, how would you create that? If you had to, that is good for the
Individual
agent, yes,
and
the
agency.
agency.
I think you have to,
Restructure that.
I think looking at rates that are specific to support needs. I know we talked for a long time acuity rates. I think there does have to be some acuity that's based on the person that's needing that support. Johnny over here might not need quite as much support, but I'm here to tell you, John in this house, with his medical needs, with his seizure needs, with going to the hospital multiple times, a week because of those kinds of things, his acuity and his need for support, it should be paid at a higher rate. Somebody coming to the day program who won't stay in their seat, won't wear a mask, and is up and down the halls all day long, running out the door, staff are trying to follow them and chase them. At $31.29 for him versus somebody who stays in their seat every day and does everything that when you're working with them and they're engaged with the staff, $31.29 for him, we might make money with him over here, but we're losing because we have 2 staff needs that have to chase that person every single day, multiple times a day around the building.
So Pat, based on what she just said, what are some of your thoughts?
I think the 42 million is going to be very helpful to get us out of COVID, but the long-term sustainability is rates that match the needs, and I have every confidence that HHS is working fabulous with us and have taken great steps to hear what we're saying and hear what you were saying. And so I think that is front and center on their priority list, and I have great faith that that's going to take off, because that's the solution, and that solution isn't a good word, but that's the flat water everybody's looking for, is sustainable rates. And you're right. There's so many variety of what each provider needs, even on the county board. But And I think boards are willing to take good rates and bad rates, but they can't take all less than good rates. And that's what I see as the solution, and I think we are steaming toward it at full speed.
Mr. John, what did you hear everything Pat just said? No, not right here.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what he said. Tell me your thoughts.
I believe that is the long-term answer. We got to do something with rates on a continual basis, not just first thing we're behind right now. So first thing you got to catch up and then stay up, stay sustain, keep going with it. But that's just going to be the long-term answer because that's and like you say, there are different needs for different consumers, and then one box don't fit all. So you're going to have to be aware of what we're dealing with there, and know that we have to have some flexibility in it, that way we can address where the needs are.
Okay, because he mentioned two things. He mentioned fee for service and rates, and Director Kerr, who has open ear and an open mind. Why are we here? We are here to gather information from you guys so that we can put together a good, solid master plan, because here's what everybody in this room knows. Fee for service is not going away. We all agree to that? Okay, so what we have to do is become open-minded, okay? And say, well, okay, since we got the ear of the CFO and he has the ear of Director Kerr, this is the new direction that we need to take, my agency and our agency, because they go together. You can't separate them. Ryan is here to represent those in his region. And there are other regions throughout the state of South Carolina. If we don't open up our minds to what's not coming, what is already here, and when we have a director in Kerr who says, Pat, EDSN, I have an open ear. Tell me. So I'm asking you all now to tell us. Somebody got a question?
Well, we have a comment from Ralph Courtney from Aiken. He's saying that the rates, what he's basically saying is the rates need to be worked on and need to be worked on, but he's agreeing with Susan, and that what we can do with the FMAP now is to get the legacy homes owned by DDSN, do things like that, your capital like that, and get those homes, the AC units, the new kitchens, things like that, the big ticket items that need to be upgraded. Let's go ahead and do that. And they could also include air filtration, emergency generators, and any equipment necessary for telehealth.
Ask him, is he gonna put that in writing back to Pat?
It's right here.
Good.
It's going right there.
All right, let's talk, let's deep dive into this fee for service. Any questions? Now is the time, because Pat is as close to the expert as we're going to find. What else do you want to know about fee for service?
I know everything. I'm hooked
He
up.
knows everything. That's why he's here. He knows everything. Go ahead. It don't have to be quick. Go ahead.
How dependent on those, are we still waiting on the cost reports to get a piece?
All the ingredients in table and momentum is moving that way. I don't have control over that. It's just, it takes HHS, ourselves, and money all to come together. And I think the ingredients are all as good as I've seen them in 4 years. And I'm very optimistic that people are really, I know my commissioners are focused on it because they're all me focused on it. And so I really feel like if I had to say one thing about the commission, they are triple time, get fee for service, and let's get rates. Is that a fair statement?
Fair, extremely fair.
So the reason I talk about it is because I hear it and I feel it, and I feel momentum, and I don't want to dwell on that because this is the home and community base, 42 million. And I know what I hear out here, so when I walk away and I make my list, I hear flexibility. I hear anything we can do to help staffing as far as giving, again, and then last thing, I hear capital coming up, capital resonating. We didn't even get into telehealth. Someone mentioned it one time, but I saw Susan jump up.
Well, I will be the biggest proponent for telehealth because we use it and it has made a huge difference for us through this whole process. And just knowing that we have somebody medically inclined to see our folks through telehealth and mitigate any, necessary or unnecessary trips to the ER, it has just been fantastic. It's truly been fantastic, and the company that we're, utilizing has been absolutely wonderful. So I'll put a plug in for telehealth any day of the week, and I think it's an ongoing service that would benefit everybody. John just started it too. And
That's the new world order.
I think it is, and I think we need to make sure we're moving in that same direction.
Daddy Bush said that in 1988, and it's 2021 now. He says, new world order. All right, that's what we're dealing with, the new world order. And telehealth is not yesterday, it's today and tomorrow. So might as well get with it, because it cuts down on a lot. It puts more money in your pocket, because at the end of the day, what are you interested in? You got to be able to survive. You have to be able to run an effective business, okay? And you have to do that every day. Some of us don't get no sleep because when we leave the job, we're thinking all night, how do we get this machine to run it? And really, from the bottom of my heart, that's where I stand. I'm from Williamsburg County. Anybody ever been in Williamsburg County, y'all? Y'all came through there? Okay. So, and I'm not just zeroing in on Williamsburg County. I got Aiken County. I got, what's the name of that other county on the other side of Orangeburg? Bamberg. On the other side of Bamberg. Allendale. Yeah, Allendale, and Jasper, and Charleston, and Richland. Yep. All of those counties. That's my responsibility. I have to answer to the constituency. Through you, I have to answer to the constituents. What that Ed Miller doing? They don't say commissioner. When I hear that, I know, boy, which one is good. But you have any comments? What's your name, dear?
Betty Lee, I'm the finance director.
Oh, now we talking. Go ahead.
I agree with everything you're saying, but one of the things is talking about employees, and in order to keep employees,
Can you come up?
we're going to have to
You come up.
give them,
Yeah.
we're going to have to give them an incentive, and an incentive to work with the agencies and to do work, because it's hard work. We do finance, and that's difficult and stressful, but we're talking about people who work in the homes and work with these individuals on a day in, day out basis. And we don't need to forget them. We need to remember that they, and especially during this COVID situation, they have been there. And we need to appreciate them and show them that we appreciate them. And when we get this money in, yes, we don't want it to be stipulated that we can do it only this way. We need to be able to, each agency, to decide how they want to spend that money, because each one has different needs. And it may be one of the things is with their staffing, to try to get an incentive for people to come in and work, because we are having trouble finding staffing. And the other thing is, we talk about the bands, we're going to have different band rates or different tiers of different cases, because some individuals might be a lower level, some a higher level. So we're going to have to look at different rates, the cost settlements. That's going to matter with us, because if we want to have to pay back money, that's going to affect what we've got. We need to know those things so that we can plan budgeting and to know what that money that we're going to get, if that's going to be what it's going to cover.
Talk a little bit about cost settlement. A little more. dig a little deeper with your show.
Well, with the cost settlements, if we have to pay money back when they finish their review of it, that's gonna affect our money at the end of our year or throughout the year of any extra money that we may have, if we have any extra money. During the COVID episode, it's been very tough because we got some PPP money, but we weren't able to use that. We got some money through the CARES Act, we were able to use that. But when you say there's free money out there and then we're not allowed to use it, why? You know, that's my question. So we need, when we have these cost settlements and things like that, we need to be able to know what they are as soon as we can, because we've got a plan. We're a business now. That's what we are, a business. We used to be, we could, if we needed anything, we could go to the state.
Right.
Now we can't. We're on our own. So we got to have information given back to us as soon as possible. We can't wait years and years, and then all of a sudden here comes the debt that we got to pay. And we
Don't
knew
go
nothing
away yet.
about
I see why Ryan Smart fellow over there.
it.
He's real smart. Don't go nowhere yet. Finish talking to Pat. Tell him how you want the ship to come in.
We need to know things. We need to be involved.
We have a number of years of backed up cost settlements on these small pockets of money. Well, it's big to you, it
Yeah.
matters. And we've got to take care of them. We didn't take care of them for a number of years, and then COVID hit, and we're not going to cost settle and take money from you during COVID, but we've got to organize them. We got to clear them up so that people can see their budgets and move forward. And I think part of this is once we get through the spending plan and getting the contracts out, our very next thing is to square away all those cost settlements. Some may be so old and stale we can't even collect them, but we got to bring order to them and resolve them. And the time now is to resolve them.
Because we got a plan.
Yep.
You know, we got to have our.
100%. Information matters when you're running a business.
Anybody else want to speak on cost settlement?
That's what I was referring to. If that was affecting the getting to the rate that we need. Is that
The
in-
agency cost settlement versus
Come on up here.
Right.
settlements for, family
That's what
supports
I
and
really
those
wanted to
things.
say. Was
You got more to say. Come on up here.
were the cost,
Finance director. We have a lot to say.
were the cost settlements
Hey,
preventing us
engine
getting
of the
to that
machine.
rate is
Yeah.
what I wanted
Yeah.
to know.
The-
Is that preventing us from getting to the rate that everybody wants?
It has slowed us for 8 years. We're going to have the fiscal year 19 cost settlement draft this week, and HHS is anxiously waiting for it. And that is going to be a foundation for them to look at our rates to move forward.
That's what I just kind of want to know.
And-
How was that
yes.
tied into getting to the rates? that we
It
need?
is a function of cost settlement tells us where the system is. Service descriptions, like Susan was talking about, that are more specific and community based, that show a little bit. You need more staff to do. That justifies a higher rate. So there's a couple of those things come together to get a rate, and we're getting them all on the table. And that's, to me, if you asked me 2 months ago, I would be like, we're pulling. I feel like they're all on the table and that people are ready to glue them all together and
That's
come up
good.
with a
That's
rate.
what we need to hear. That's where we need to be.
Now is the time. If you don't hear that word anymore, we can't promise what's gonna happen in the next go round. We're not even looking for a next go round. This is it.
Yes.
This is it. Whatever you guys need to tell us, tell us. There's no bad question, none. No bad questions any place, all right?
Pat, I got a question.
Now we're talking. Go ahead, Mr. Higgins.
Man, they're really warming up now.
Yeah.
And Ms. Moore, ask you to predict a little bit, but
You done stood, hey, you stood up. Boy, look at here. Put your hands in your pocket. Go ahead.
if you had to predict if we get to the residential flip to fee for service, and I know you can't force Health and Human Services to make a decision on rates until they're ready. So if we get to that point and we have to do that flip to fee for service, is this something this FMAP money could be used for to help the system transition through that if the rates haven't been adjusted ahead of it? Because
we had to flip the B's and the I's before the rate was adjusted and.
When they make their rate decision, which is all we can do is provide information.
Right.
They have to make their independent judgment based on the facts. And part of the fuel, if we do have individual residential setting rates and staffing is built in, assuming there's an increase. Well, the increase doesn't happen without state funds. The General Assembly, both the House and Senate are in a position to raise $10 million this summer as of July 1st. That's a great sign. But the unique timing of the funds that we have at our disposal, 42.5 million over here, we're going to end the year at 50 million. A lot of that 6.2% FMAP. We have funds, not forever funds. We can't fund rates forever, but we have funds to drive rates if the decision is so made. And I don't think we're ever going to get a rate unless they're never going to get a rate unless they think we have state match to match it. We have state match.
I think everybody agree those permanent rates are going to happen, but like I said, can we use it? Can some of this money be used for the temporary? Yeah.
The part of the whole going from bans to fee for service is to more efficiently match state funds. And the switch will create state funds that is usable to drive rates. But again, a lot of it is just timing. If we're in this in-between phase, just like Ryan said, it was, well, whatever gap we have is going to be eaten up because we're not where we need to be. But I feel like we're where we are, and the answer to your question is there are ample state funds to fund them with confidence for years, with the theory that sooner or later there will have to be more recurring funds under them. But when you talk about the money that's available to us in the short term, and part of the planning is how does this all come together? It could be part of the plan to fund rates.
You don't have to sit down yet because what we're talking about is a driver. I don't play golf, but I know what that driver can do. I'd make go a long way. Now the ball's subject to go in all kind of direction because you're playing yourself. That's why you try to play. I got that from me. But you guys here, we get questions here. I know who I'm talking to. I don't come blind. A lot of knowledge is in this room that can give us on a whole base. You follow what I'm saying? What we need to move this fee for service, because let's say we get 4 years out of this, right? I'm just using that as a number, right? We should be able to eventually drive our own engines. Am I right? Now, if Pat and I showed up and we said, man, we don't have no money, y'all would ask us, why y'all here?
Empty room.
We would have been
Remember who? No. Fix the lock. Hey man, that means a lot. Fix the lock. Let him in. The guy come here and say, I can't fix the lock for that. All right. Fee for service. Anybody want to grind in on that? What else? I'm telling you now, Pat's going to go back and we're not going to rely on an open conversation. Joe Friday. Y'all remember Joe Friday? What do you say? Give me the facts.
Facts.
Is that fair enough?
Remember, we're not bad guys. We're good guys.
Now you're talking.
We're good.
Now you're talking.
We're out there working, trying to help these special folks.
Now you're talking, because you just hit the root of it all. We are helping people that are not in a position to help themselves. They move and drive according to our input, our hands-on. Everybody agree with that? So help us to help them. We just sitting on this side of the table, but all of you all could have been right here on the same side of the table. That's where we are. We in this soup pot together. We have once in a lifetime opportunity to make the best of it. Let's do that. With that, I'll rest my case.
Okay, we have one more comment for Ralph. He said that what we need to remember in this discussion is the respite and other in-home services for folks. And he's thinking of things that we need to do, incentives that we need to do to get those folks combined hours, bonuses, things like that, to get more folks as far as the in-home and the respite services. So
We want to drill down on that.
that's something that.
Horry County.
My last comment, it goes back to again, when you hear the term profit for a nonprofit, that seems to be a dirty word for a lot of people. But I think we have to make sure that the rates allow us to have somewhat of a profit, again, to address capital needs and all those things that going forward in a fee-for-service world are now going to be, not in the rate has to sustain those ongoing needs. I just really feel like that's an important component to this discussion going forward.
And last thing too, I'd like to say too, we talk about the rates, is just, each program, like Susan mentioned, needs to sustain itself. In years past, we've been able to rob Peter to pay Paul, with the band structure. So they need to sustain that particular program.
That's on the table. Right, Pat?
Yes, sir.
That's on the table. One thing that I can tell you about this commission, we have a staff in Columbia I put up against any staff in any agency in the state. Okay? Supply them, they come to us as a commission, we don't hesitate. If it makes good sense, that's all. Does it make good sense? If it makes good sense, then let's do it. Okay, Georgetown, Charleston. Where else did I miss?
I tell you what, you have a district that goes everywhere.
Hello?
I'll tell you what, nobody has a district that goes into as many places as Commissioner Miller, definitely.
But I just want to say that I look forward to this. I look forward to talking to Ryan. Because he's on the real side. He doesn't ask me, he says, Ed, yeah, I have a meeting and you're on the agenda. Yes, sir. So I'm here and I really appreciate you coming all the way from Horry County. Now, Woody Moore, I hold that against you.
All right, well, I think that's a good way to end it. And we want to thank everybody that's joined us online, virtually. And we have recorded this, so it will be posted in due course. And we want to thank everybody who joined us here, and certainly thank Commissioner Miller for coming here and listening and leading this discussion. I think we had a good discussion, and we're ending in about an hour and 15 minutes, so that's not too bad. All right, so other than that, we will go ahead and end the chat.